Precursor, and I really love the name as well. But we'll genuinely discuss about this as well. And I think if I start from any of the uh, like the first question is about obviously it's an AI era, and how do you think what step is the very basic step for a founder to start, like, okay, I'm going to build an MVP, and what do you think, like, this is like for example, when we before AI, we have obviously a prototype and everything, discussion, research, validation, and market and everything. We compile every single thing one together, and then we start making a prototype and then shifting it to the development. So, but now we are in AI era, and I've been following you on LinkedIn as well recently, and I really love your perspective about fast development and then the planning that obviously consume too much time if you just have a rapid development through AI and you have not planned anything yet. So, what would be the start of that for a founder through in this AI era?
Yeah,
Any
I
of
think it.
continue. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's such an important aspect nowadays to really utilize AI as a tool, right? Because we, as let's say humans, can only move so fast when it comes to coming up with a prototype, coming up with MVP, everything like that. So in this day and age, you have to move as fast as everyone else. And you basically need to obviously have your idea, get your validation from the idea using AI to even validate and market research your idea. And then just creating an MVP. Like, I was talking with Russell about it yesterday. I was able to just do a random MVP probably within 5 minutes. And is it perfect? Absolutely not. We can look at it later, but it's out there. So now I can get 5 friends and I can be like, hey, why don't you guys just test it, break it, validate it? And I literally can have an entire validation of a prototype within 25 minutes. So at the end of the day, you are now the bottleneck. So you just need to get out of the way and just move as fast as you can.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Russell, do you want to add anything on this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us as developers and technical founders want to bring something to market as quickly as possible, right? That's the ultimate goal, is to get actual user feedback. And these tools like Cursor, Windsurf, Replit, these have made it so much easier for solo developers or teams of developers to build faster. But one of the things that a lot of developers struggle with is they just go quickly into building, right? They just have an idea and they go right into building. And that creates a problem because without the structure that you typically would have in everything that you had mentioned before, with the iteration of ideas and building like a PRD and all of these things, if you just go directly into coding, you kind of just build a mess, right? And so I think one of the things that we're focusing on is how do we create structure from the beginning so that we can build apps very quickly and easily, like Chris was saying. I mean, he's just yesterday, he was building some apps, some MVPs in under 5 minutes with literally zero prompts. Like, he was just dropping the documents in there that we generate from our app, and without even any prompt, it's building an entire app out, which is kind of mind blowing when you think about it. And so, yeah, so I think that's really what is important as the first step for a founder, is defining really the broad scope of everything that you want to build, so you have this bigger structure, this bigger picture, right? And that's what our app is doing, is building this project overview, and then it takes it and niches it down into a simplified MVP that has your core features in it. You can bring it to market, have some users test it immediately, and just get the feedback that you need to head in the right direction, right? Because until you have that real user feedback, everything's just an idea. And so we want to be able to take solo developers, teams, get that app out there as soon as possible, get real user feedback, and then iterate on that idea.
All right, thank you. So, in
Yeah,
addition to this, as we have seen, there are too many tools out there in the market, and there is a race that is obviously going on, and don't know where it would end. We don't know genuinely. But on the other hand, how do you think what are the exact tools that are more stable in terms of your understanding? Like you are already doing something for Precursor and how it can help with the existing tools they are already in the market. So obviously, I need your perspective from both of you, obviously, and you can divide that with the Loveable, with the Cursor, with Replit, or with Gemini, or whatever tools they are in the market. Yeah, over to you.
sure. You want to take that on first, Chris, and then I'll
Yeah, I can
follow
talk
up?
a little bit since I had a little playing around with like Lovable and Replit, like, a little bit more background. I don't think I'd spoken too much about it. So I'm a principal software engineer with background. So, I'm heavy coder, so I typically dive into like full IDEs and everything. So I had never really messed with like Lovable or Replit, too much. I was either, just straight Visual Studio or, Cursor or Claude Code, in the terminal. But, I thought I'd give it a try just to see. And it's interesting. Like, I think it's a great medium. Like, if you're not fully technical, the code is a little bit abstracted away. You can still access it, you can still touch it, but it is a little bit abstracted. So you're just working with like prompting. So when it comes to like, I would say Lovable, if you're not as technical, I think, that's probably a great starting point. Replit was very interesting actually. I ran a few tests on it where Lovable, I tried to just, I guess you call it zero shot prompting because it wasn't even a prompt in there, it was just a document. Um, and it was able to build out a full like authentication, login, dashboard. I think it was just a simple task app, and but it had no database, right? Where Replit uses more actual agents in the cloud, so it was able to actually set up a full database, and it was able to set up the full authentication, and then actually saving the tasks into a database, which was again amazing because there was no information from me other than those documents I had tossed in there. And then I can let Russell speak a little more about Cursor.
Yeah. So I've been using Cursor pretty much, I guess, for almost like 6 to 8 months now, pretty exclusively for a lot of development tasks, from building MVPs to, um, reworking old projects that I've had. And one of the things that I love about Cursor is that it's just so flexible, right? You can really work on any sort of app, whether it's a mobile app, a web app, even just basic scripts. You know, but in terms of like the strengths and weaknesses, one of the things that I think is very interesting is these tools like Cursor, Windsurf, Replit, Lovable. There's a ton of them. They come out all the time. They are AI, right? And so they do understand human language, but at the same time, they are code, right? And they operate on code, and they generally understand code better than human language. And so a lot of what we're doing with Precursor is being that intermediary between the human side, the developer side, and the machine side, which is Cursor and these tools, right? So we allow a developer to come in with human language and their ideas and translate that into JSON documents or Markdown documents that are much easier to read for these tools like Cursor. And that way, also, one of the struggles that a lot of these tools have is a limited context window, right? So they're using large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, right? And though each of those has their own context window, and once you exceed that context window, you start losing context. And so part of what we're able to do with translating human language into machine language is limit that context down So we provide these tools exactly what they need and none of what they don't need to be able to complete the task and get really good results. And so I think that's one of the real strengths of what we're building, and what these tools allow you to do really as a developer is take our human language, right, the way that we're used to speaking, turn that into machine readable language and get the result that you want out of it. So it's pretty powerful once what you can do once you have the structure to build within these platforms. And for me, the one thing that I really just love is the flexibility of these IDEs. I mean, if you're a classic developer and you've been trained on VS Code, you can basically jump right into Cursor, understand where pretty much everything is inside that application, and start building immediately, right? And so we make that just one step easier by taking all these documents, importing them directly into your code base, and giving the chat window all of the context it needs to build efficiently and build really powerful applications in a short period of time.
Awesome. So I got a chance to try out Loveable at some point and Replit. One of my team member she said these are the tools that are already like out there in the market, and I think one of the LinkedIn CEO maybe posted about Replit Replit can just with a one prompt he can clone the LinkedIn actually. So
Mhm.
she told me you need to try it. So I have on that time we were working on a mobile application development, and I just signed up with Replit and Loveable and try out with different, spent few hours on both, and I think, in my opinion, they are still very limited. Like obviously they are growing, they are really good with the desktop applications, with the web applications, but still they are fine tuning it to getting it ready for mobile based apps and other frameworks that are still not very mature. So how do you think whenever it's about web applications, whenever it's about API, whenever it's about prototype, and whenever it's about obviously mobile applications. So, how do you rate those tools? These are the really significant tools for XYZ feature, for XYZ application. Like, how do you rate it? I would love to hear that. And we are still to be honest, we are using Chat GPT still with that, and obviously I encourage engineers to set up cursor and other things with the IDE as you mentioned. Like if you are really good with VS Code or any other IDE, and you just need to chat within that window, and you are getting whatever you want. So yeah, would love to hear that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's gonna come down to what you're looking for, and everyone's situation is going to be different. Everyone's technical ability is going to be different. What their use case is going to be different. Like I'll give you a little example. Me and Russell a couple weeks ago, I think I had just seen like a LinkedIn post, and it was like a interesting one where someone was like, "Oh, there's this new AI API where." You can put in an old photo, you can put in like a cracked, old, water damage, whatever it might be, photo, and you can essentially restore it to brand new. And I saw this and I instantly wrote Russell, and I was like, you know what, let's just build something. Like this is just a wrapper. Like, let's just build something. Like it was just instant. So we didn't really have to go through this whole ideation phase. We just knew what we wanted to build. We knew we needed the planning as far as what tech stack, what PRD, what kind of MVP do we want to have. I want to say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, within a day, we already had a working prototype. Within 3 days, we already had it pushed out and deployed. And I think within 6 days, we already had a paying customer from it. Like,
Yeah.
And it's so for that situation, we were just like, hey, we're not trying to, do this full-fledged application, like an enterprise application. I think that's maybe the distinction, right? If you're just trying to build an app, get quickly, get validation, just run with it, just go with it. But if you're actually trying to do build something like how we're kind of doing with Precursor, where it's we're trying to build an enterprise level, you have to have the planning. You have to know exactly what the features are, the security behind it, what kind of database you need, SQL, no SQL, all these kind of factors kind of come in, and you're going to have to go in and tweak it. Like, you can prompt your way through it, but it's going to be a lot harder in today's day and age with these tools.
Yeah. I would say this too. I mean, I think, looking into the future, there's going to be likely tens to hundreds of these tools that will come out, whether it's Loveable, Replit, Cursor. They're just going to keep coming out, right? Because there's a need for them, there's a market for them, and they each have their own unique strengths and weaknesses. Like, I know I've used some other ones like Bolt. That's another one that's pretty popular, and they each tend to work in slightly different ways, have slight advantages. Like, they also tend to favor certain tech stacks, right? Like, I know if you start a Bolt app, generally it's going to start building in React instead of Next.js. And these are just built-in sort of, uh, I guess, biases in the developers who created them, and also the models that they're using, right? Because all these models have cutoff dates for their knowledge base. So I think, really, to answer your question, when it comes to like what is the comparative differences for developers, I think really as a developer you just have to try a bunch of them and figure out what works best for you. For me, I personally like Cursor a lot just because of the flexibility, the knowledge of VS Code that's already there. It's also like on my computer, it's not browser based. I really like that feature as well. So I think that's really important. The other thing that I want to mention, related to what Chris was saying, is one of the benefits of using these tools is that it limits developer fatigue, right? Like, when we, as a solo developer or solo founder, we have this idea and it's very motivating, right? We're like, oh my God, I want to create this thing, bring it into reality. And one of the things that generally happens is, if it takes you a while to like see the result of this thing, you just tend to get tired of development, or that excitement of actually building the thing, having that idea, and then turning it into reality slowly fades over time. And so what we're able to do is actually get you from, having that idea to seeing that actually working in such a short amount of time, that you keep that excitement going, and you're able to build on it like much faster, and just keep that going, like in the sense of, you're not just bored with what you're going. I made a post about this actually the other day on LinkedIn, and I thought it was kind of funny. Every developer has that folder, right? That folder of projects that never came to light, right? Those only local host projects. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? We start building these projects, and then we get bored with it, or we get another idea, or something else comes up, and we leave these things to the end. What we're trying to do is help developers go from that idea to actually putting it out there. And one of the other things that I really love about Precursor too is that we develop the user story and your target audience as well, right? So we help you decide who is our avatar, and that gets built directly into all of those PRD documents. So one of the things with what Chris was talking about, we built this application called renewpick.com. And when we were actually working with Precursor and building these documents, we talked a lot about the avatar, right? Which was, somebody who has old photos to restore. So that's going to be somebody over like the age of 40 or 50. We were targeting like all these different demographics, and all of that was baked into the PRD and all the documents that we created, so that when we actually took that into Cursor, not only did it create the beautiful components and everything like that, it actually wrote all of the text content as well and targeted that specific audience. So we weren't just writing, generic content. It was speaking directly to our avatar and saying the words that they understand, speaking to their fears, their struggles, their passions. And that's one of the most powerful parts about this, is that you don't need a full team of design content writers, right? You as a solo founder can go out there, have an amazing idea, workshop that idea with an AI, come out with a bunch of amazing documents that you can just drop into really any one of these tools at this point, and get an MVP that you can put out there and get that, user feedback, and then just iterate on and prove that. So it's pretty crazy what you can do, regardless of what tool you want to use. And again, I think it really just comes down to each individual developer having their own preference of what they like to use, what apps they like to build, and which works best with them. I really recommend go out there and just try them all, just like you did, and see what you like, because everybody's going to have their own preference.
Yeah, and there
Yeah,
was one thing I wanted to just touch on real quick too, what he was talking about with the target audience. Like it is like, for everyone here is like a solo or a founder and everything. When you're building these apps, that is like such an important thing and a foundational thing you have to have is who are you targeting? What is your target avatar? Because like he was saying with the
Yeah.
design, you if your target audience is going to be people in their 80s, you're not going to have this extremely vibrant like website that has all these animations and like could
Hmm.
possibly give someone a seizure, right? So you
Yeah.
need to have that, you have to have that baked into your actual design from the start of who you're targeting. Okay, we're going to use more neutral colors, or we're going to do more of a professional look with this site or this app. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
another key thing too.
Yeah, even the complexity of how many buttons were on screen, right? The whole app operates with literally one button. You upload a picture and you press renew and it does everything because we knew that our target audience is not going to be able to navigate a whole dashboard with lots of buttons and things like that. They just need a one click, go from the old picture to the new one, and then how do they export that, right? So we made the whole thing simple and that was all baked into those documents from the beginning.
yeah. So one one question that is a bit off topic, maybe like
Sure.
my brother Usman, who is in Italy, and he has few ideas related to the European market, and he's a non-technical person generally. You can say like a non-technical early stage founder. You can say that, and he said like no, there is an AI and there is nothing uh, to put effort to develop something. So then I told him like no, there is not something like this. Like if there is an AI, but obviously you have at least sound technical knowledge about things to develop anything. So I think I want to learn from you guys. I want to listen to you guys around this perspective narrative that is building in the market. Like any non-technical person can also develop MVP, but at some point it obviously depends on the situation, what exactly you are building as well, and what kind of complex application that would be around you are doing. So I need to listen to your perspective about that, like how people are actually assuming it as who are non-technical, and they think like whenever we just give you a one prompt to AI and they will build something for us, and we just don't need to put any effort. And do you think, and the follow-up question is, do you think at some point those AI bots are would be enough capable at some point in future, maybe after 1 or 2 years, like those things what non-technical people are assuming, maybe that would happen in upcoming years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to really come down to people that are non-technical. It's going to come down to how well can you explain things and what's the best context you can give. If you are going to be very vague about things, you're going to get a very vague application and it's going to kind of be deterministic on the AI. Well, like, I don't know, you told me not to put a button here, so I'm not going to. So it's going to come down to you have to really envision exactly what you want. Where are the buttons? What, when you click the button, what does it do? You have to go, you can't do surface level. You almost, for non-technical people, AI is very, very smart, but it is very dumb without direction. Like you
Yeah.
can, if you don't handhold it, at least in this right now, in this day and age, it's you have to handhold it. So very clearly explaining, I want this view with this image. When you click this button, it does this, and that's why these documents, that we're creating with Precursor, are so important because you have to have that context that we're kind of talking about. And in the future, maybe in a year or two. I mean, the models just get better and better. So that's so beneficial to technical and non-technical people, because as the models get better, it becomes easier to really work with these things. And it's, I mean, at the end of the day, Russell, it's just pretty much like abstracting away, the technical aspect. Will you still have to go in there and tweak things? I would probably say yes. But the new, and I mean, a lot of people say that the new coding language is words, like actually like explaining it. It's not syntactically, coding. It's coding with your thoughts and your words and how clearly you can explain it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Chris and I had this conversation actually probably about a month ago. We were at a local developer meetup, and we were talking about context, right? We speak a lot about context when we talk about large language models. And as humans, we have all of this assumed context. Like, I'm sitting in a chair, there's gravity, I'm not going to float into space right now, right? We're in a building, or we're outside, there's a wind blowing. AI doesn't have all of this context. It has knowledge, but it lacks all of the context that we as humans sort of take for granted, right? We understand where we are. And so as the developer, we have to provide all of this context for what we want. And that's why you can have very mixed results. I mean, I remember, I met Chris, I think back in April, and there was a day when Chris kind of started just like working more with Cursor, and he messaged me and he's like, I am so frustrated. I'm about to smash my computer. And all it took was 1 5-minute conversation where I explained to him like how I inject context into my Cursor applications. And that's really what spawned Precursor too, which is kind of cool, is that conversation. And he went from basically an app that barely worked, looked horrible. No offense, Chris, but looked horrible and barely worked, to something that was like completely functional, looked amazing, looked futuristic, worked exactly as intended in a matter of minutes, really, right? Because he added the correct context. And so I think that's, if we can tackle that, I think, and that's what we're trying to do with Cursor by giving it a system prompt and helping it engage with the developer to get all of that context and organize that context. I think that's really going to be the next step towards helping non-developers get into this. The other hurdle that I think non-developers will have to tackle is all of the non-code based parts of development, right? Like DNS servers and registering domains and setting up a database and SQL queries, things like that, that are not specifically code based, but are still tasks that developers take on. I think those will be a challenge as well for non-developers. So I think you said like your brother is a non-developer, right? So does he understand how to, add records to DNS, right? So he may be able to build an app, but he may not be able to host it live. I think the last thing that's really the key piece here that a lot of times is missed, and I think we're not at the point yet where we're seeing this pain point come up yet, but it is one that's going to show up pretty quickly, is cybersecurity, right? So if we have a lot of non-developers building apps that are going out there in the public, they're going to be hacked. And that's just a reality of all software, right? Software really pushes security to the last, when it should be security first. And AI in particular is very vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. So um, I think that's sort of, I don't think we're at the point where there's enough of these apps out there where people are seeing the vulnerabilities in building with AI. And certainly, developers who've been in it since before AI know what to look out for and know how to build secure apps. But as we get more non-developers coming into this space and building apps on their own, we're going to definitely see more vulnerable apps, and it's something that needs to be handled as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
and oh,
yes,
yeah, I
please.
was just going to say quickly on that point too. That is a very important topic where, if you are a founder and you are non-technical, you can get the MVP out there, you can get the prototype out there, But once you actually start getting some traction with it, you need to definitely figure out some sort of either hiring someone that is technical to look at it, to really look, because there are about a million ways that anybody can hack your site, access your data, you know what I mean, exploit your customers' data. And, it's even happens at these huge companies that I think they call it a black swan event, right? Where you could be worth $1 billion and your customer data just got leaked or hacked or whatever, and your valuation will go to zero real quick because you lose trust in the market. So early
Yeah.
on, iterate fast, get it out there, validation. But once you have your validation, you get a little bit of traction, then you need to like definitely get someone technical to really look what's going on under the hood.
Yeah.
To talk about cybersecurity. So you have opened a long discussion around things like, if we assume after 1 year, like everyone has its own AI chatbot, and they just fine tuned it, and those chatbots are actually interacting with each other by scheduling a meeting. For example, I was looking. I was just noticed a startup about if you have a meeting in 30 minutes and you need to take a break or you need to take a nap. So yeah, you can take a nap, and your own assistant would take that meeting. So, and so I was just figuring it, trying to research something about, like, whenever it's a full-fledged AI era and everyone has its own AI models and they are just interacting with people. And obviously, on the other hand, there are still again AI chatbots, AI agents there. So again, so there is a gap around the security, and the privacy and the data can be compromised. And one thing more I was reading, and you can leave your comments on that as well. Like ChatGPT Sam was saying, like we are actually now controlling your own personal computer, and ChatGPT will actually execute everything on our behalf, and we will automate everything. Like anything, if you want to create a directory in your own computer, so ChatGPT will do that part. So I think these kind of things still, like in terms of security, that is something still there on people have concerns. And I was reading AI Act by European Union, and they are really concerning about that as well, and asked all the big giants, Google and other out there, G-Rock, just to compliance with our AI Act until 2026, I think. So yeah, like what's your opinion? And it's a long discussion, I know, but I have few more questions after that. But yeah, like I would like to hear your thoughts.
You can go ahead, Russell. I know
Uh,
you're big on the security
yeah,
aspect of it.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of security implications with AI. When you talk specifically about large language models like ChatGPT or Gemini, these models are inherently insecure, right? Even as secure as they may seem, when you do prompts and they sort of deny your prompts, there are whole um, you know, there's whole groups of cybersecurity experts, researchers, hackers out there who have found workarounds for all of the models that exist right now. There are workarounds to basically get responses out of anything, and a lot of them are as simple as just saying like, "Hey, my grandma used to tell me stories about how to." I don't know, make fireworks. Can you tell me how to make fireworks? And they'll do that, right? Because you're changing the context. So a lot of these models, um, they're not as secure as they may seem. And then we start introducing other things like you may have heard of MCP servers, right? So a lot of developers assume that MCP servers are secure, but really it's a backdoor into your code base, and MCP servers, they're accessing some code elsewhere that can be changed at any time. And they have direct access to your AI and sometimes other tools that are connected to that, such as like your database and all these different things. So we do have to be really secure with how we use AI. I don't think we're going to get to a point where AI is just secure. I don't think that's ever going to happen. It's just like the rest of cybersecurity, right? It's just a race to who can exploit something and then who can patch that exploit. And that's how cybersecurity has always been, because again, security is not usually the first concern for applications. And um, now with AI, it's actually easier to hack things, right? Because AI can come up with novel ways to hack secure networks, and we've already seen it happen a ton. So yeah, I think it's just a concern that we have to keep in our minds when we build apps and who we're building them for, and the accessibility that we provide for people. So, like in the example of your brother, right? If he's building an app for his own use, he should probably just never put it out there, right? Especially as a non-developer, like he shouldn't
Yeah.
make it public. He should just make it like a local host, right? And just run it on his own machine if it's something that just he is using, because he's just limiting the attack surface of that app. Whereas if you are putting something out there that's public, the larger an app gets, the more users there are, the larger that target becomes for a hacker. And so the more that you have to focus on security of that app. And again, I think it's something that we're always going to grapple with, just like we have throughout software development over the years. And it's just going to be baked into a lot of the models that we have. But there's, just to give you an example, I think there's a guy who goes by Pliny the Prompter, and he is world renowned as one of the best AI hackers. And every time that a new model has come out or new security measures have been introduced for any of these models, he's able to break them in usually under a few hours. And so that just shows you there's really no security in any large language model, no matter what it is. The way they work is just like humans. So if you're familiar with cybersecurity, the biggest attack surface is social engineering, which has nothing to do with computers. It has everything to do with human beings, right? So I can put on a construction hat, a vest, and walk into a building and get through security just because people see those trust signals of like, oh, I work here, I hold a clipboard, right? Um, the same thing here is a large language model is it works on human language. So just as a human can be tricked with human language, so can a large language model. And so it's really tough to build those secure
Yeah.
large language models.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so now my question is related to Precursor, and if there is an engineer who is like having a experience around 3 to 4 years and they are working with different applications, how to start it uh, from the very beginning, like if they are using like ChatGPT for a recent time, and they want to move to to uh, to Precursor and Cursor with the IDE setup. Obviously normally people use VS Code, and so I would love to know like where to start it, and if genuinely like it would be a learning for me as well. Like I didn't try Cursor yet. Like I have been in the tech ecosystem since 10 years, and I feel like what I need is uh, Chat GPT is actually meeting my needs genuinely for now. But
Mhm.
for what exactly issue I'm facing in Chat GPT is there is a synergy, there is a streamlining between the files, between the like code that is missing in ChatGPT. But in obviously in Cursor, that would got covered in a very good way. I would love to learn about that as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of the idea that we have with, Precursor and everything, where we wanted to make it as simple as possible. So, we're setting it up where you basically have like this, it's essentially just like a chat, just like how you would have with Chat GPT, but our, agents that we've created are they're tailored to get you to workshop back and forth, we a couple months ago we had this concept of persona engineering. So, and I think a lot of people, they may not, I'll just go over it real quick. It's the idea of you give these agents this persona. Like, before you even prompt it, you say, hey, you are a systems architect with 20 years experience building enterprise applications, kind of that ordeal. But with Precursor, what we do is we want to walk you through, like, step by step, like, what are all the key features you want with this application. So then when you do get this document, you can literally just bring it, export it right out to, like, Cursor. And you were saying that you haven't really used Cursor. Well, what we're trying to do with Precursor is make it IDE agnostic. So what I mean by that is, if you are comfortable with Replit, if you're comfortable with Loveable, if you're comfortable with Bolts or Cursor or Claude Code, Copilot, the list goes on and on. It doesn't matter. You can take the same exact documents you're going to get with Precursor and use it with Loveable, use it with Replit, use it. You could, using it with actual chat GPT, there's no actual coding there. So,
Yeah.
it's a little difficult there. But if you have tech background, I mean, Cursor is great because, like you said, you have the context of the code base. And now you have the context of your application with these product requirement documents, with this design system, with this tech architecture. So,
I would add this too. So uh, a lot of what I do on the side when I'm not coding is actually coaching developers. And I've heard what you mentioned a lot, which is you feel like ChatGPT is sort of handling all the tasks that you need it for. And one of the things that I've seen a lot with that is that that is a common experience for a lot of developers right up until they start using Cursor. And the reason why is everything that it's failing on is what Cursor adds to the picture, right? So one of the main benefits of Cursor is that it actively indexes your entire code base. So again, like what I was talking about, where you need that context of, like, I'm sitting in a chair, there's gravity, right? Your ChatGPT will make assumptions because it doesn't have the context of your entire code base. And that's why a lot of times
Exactly.
it's not that ChatGPT is bad at coding, it's that it doesn't have enough context to make the right decisions. And it just makes assumptions. And so what Cursor does is it can index your entire code base, and it understands where certain files are, what's already been created, what's not been created. And what Precursor does, which is really powerful, is it takes it one step further and it leverages a tool that's already built into Cursor, and that is Cursor rules. So Cursor rules are basically guardrails that are set up for Cursor. It's a piece of context that's automatically injected at the beginning of every single prompt that you do, right? And so what Precursor does is it will actually also allow you to build these really high quality Cursor rules documentation that explains to Cursor exactly where all of the things are that it needs in order to understand the context, but also things like, what is the architecture that I'm using? What is the style that I'm using? How am I implementing auth, right? So you don't have to add all of this extra context every time that you prompt Cursor. It's just baked right into it again. And so I would challenge you to use Cursor now. And then when we launch Precursor, try that as well, because you're going to see that what you thought was very fast was actually like driving an old Volkswagen Bug. And when you use Precursor, you're going to be using a Ferrari, and you're going to understand, like, okay, this is way faster than I thought, right? This works way better. And, to be honest, when I started using Cursor, I was like, I feel like I'm cheating, right? I feel like I'm skipping the line and like making things easy. And the reality is, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it, right? There's going to be another developer who uses Cursor. And when it comes to technology, being the first to market is one of the most important things, right? It's not that Google has the best products or Facebook has the best products. Like, I assure you that Facebook is a pretty crappy software when you start looking at it, but they were first to market, right? And they're usually first to market on every new thing. And so that's really the goal now, is to be first to market, but you can't do that if you don't have the structure to build the thing. And so that's what we're really allowing people to do. What we're allowing developers to do is build the structure first and then take that right into a tool like Cursor and drive their Ferrari to the finish line before everyone else. And so I challenge you to try that when you get a chance. Try Cursor, and when Precursor comes out, get on that early access list, get the beta testing, and you'll see, like, it is mind blowing what you can build. And when you start iterating, like, nobody can touch you. You're literally cheating at software development.
Yeah, so yeah, I totally understand. And one thing you have mentioned, I really like it. You are actually coaching the devs as well how to use AI tools effectively, and obviously
Yes.
that AI series is around that as well. Just setting up a narrative like you can use AI tools effectively, and you can learn, and you can do things more quickly by learning those things. Obviously, and obviously challenge accepted, and we will definitely start using Cursor and yeah overall like the things that are actually transforming and even we were definitely very dead what we can say is in using chat gpt pro versions, and now obviously we will shift into in the cursor. And one thing that is really important you mentioned, like cursor is having your whole setup code base setup, and he knows everything, where are the files, and how it's linked up with each other, and what is missing, which libraries we need to set up, configure. And obviously chat gpt that doesn't know. Chat gpt can, we can say that for a small and medium project might be at some point we can use effectively as a senior engineer, but cursor is something that would obviously feel you, like as you mentioned, like it's a cheating and you are doing everything automatically just with one
Well,
command.
Yeah.
that's one thing that a lot of people don't actually know, or you might know. ChatGPT, Claude, any chatbot that you're actually working with, and even APIs that you're connecting to these AI models, they're actually stateless. So there's no actual real memory there. Um, and what I mean by that is you can ask, ChatGPT and say, "Hey, my name is Chris." And if you don't stay in that window and you go into a new window and you say, "Hey, what's my name?" No idea, because there's actually no state there. So anytime you're chatting with a long thread in ChatGPT, what it's doing, it's sending that entire thread and that entire message back to the AI LLM, and then getting a response. And then it's attaching your latest message and sending that whole thing again. So, with when you're saying about using cursor and stuff, like, you almost have to, because there's no way that you could copy your entire code base into ChatGPT and then be able to get any context on it. So.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what that indexing is doing, is it's preserving the state in Cursor so that when you do these prompts, it's attaching the most important context along with your prompt. And one other thing that I should mention too is that when you use Cursor, it allows you to actually use whichever large language model you prefer, right? So if you like ChatGPT, you can continue using ChatGPT right inside of Cursor. Or if you prefer Claude or Gemini or Grok or any of the other models that are out there, you as a developer can choose which one you actually work with inside of there, which is really amazing, because you can actually, I think it's one of the best ways to see how these models compete, because you can basically start coding with one and then go to another, and you'll see very drastic differences. I mean, right now I feel like Claude Sonnet 4 is light years ahead of everything else, in terms of coding, right? And some of them are better for other things. Like, I think when you're doing ideation and things like that, a lot of times, like, ChatGPT is actually better for that. And so you as a developer can say, "Hey, when I'm ideating, I want to use this. When I'm building, I want to use this. When I'm building the back end, I want to use this. When I'm debugging, use this." So it's a really powerful tool that allows you a lot more flexibility as well.
Yeah, so true. And one more question, and then we will go to the Q&A, and
Sure.
that is about API. So API is the whole thing that is actually like connecting every model and every agent with each other throughout the applications, bridging it. And what do you think? Uh, like maybe I would ask more technically, what parameters or standards we need to take care of it. Like obviously, any cursor or tool can help us with building API, but whenever it's about security, it's a long discussion. But do we have any basic parameters that we need to keep in mind to secure with a very small and medium startup? Not for obviously for enterprise, they can pay more for security, but for a small and medium, like how do you see like API is something that need to cover that?
Uh, well, first thing is, don't upload your API keys anywhere. There's even like in these uh, IDEs like Cursor, you want to put your API keys in like .env files too, right? Because not that, I mean, there's probably some training that's going on, not, an extensive amount, but you'll notice there's in Copilot, I've even seen it where I've typed API key and the like IntelliSense will automatically just paste some random API key that I have no idea about. And I think that's happened with people where they all of a sudden had like a $50,000 bill from AWS because they leaked their
Mhm.
API key. But as far as like actual APIs themselves, when you're building these APIs, you know, authorization, authentication, JWT tokens, cross origin, these are the terms. If you don't know them, you need to know them and you need to implement them. I think there's a lot of people who don't understand what cores actually is, so they just turn it off, but it's probably like one of the biggest things to actually help your site. And a short overview, if you don't know what it is, if your back end needs to know what the front end or what the URL of the front end is. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like if someone's coming to knock on your door, you might want to look out the window to see who it is instead of just opening the door and just welcoming anybody into your house.
Yeah.
Is kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah. I would also add, I talk a lot about this with some of the people that I mentor as well, is there there are people who are much more intelligent than us who understand authentication and authorization, right? I'm not an expert in security, although I know a lot. And so I like to defer to the people who are doing it for a living, right? And so don't try to build your own authentication service or authorization service. Use the ones that are already out there that are well known and have huge teams of developers working on them, because you're not going to remember every edge case that's possible. That's what they do all day long. So use those tools, right? Like use OAuth, right? OAuth is an amazing tool, right? And it's open source. You can use it in like Supabase. You can use it in all sorts of different tools. Use things like Zero Auth. Like these are providers that basically do this for a living. Don't try to build your own. It just doesn't make sense. The other thing too is, probably something that a lot of people miss when it comes to production is just having row level security. So that's the authorization part, like who gets to see what data, and how do we protect people from seeing data that they're not supposed to see. So understanding, um, you know, if I'm a user, I should only be able to see my own data, right? I shouldn't be able to like query somebody else's data. The other thing that I would say that I see a lot with new developers is using randomized like UUIDs and things like that, right? Like um, don't use like one as your user, right? Because if I see that when I go to a URL, it's like, whatever URL /1/ payment information, I can just put in /2 and I might see somebody else's. So using randomized UUIDs, things like that. But again, default to the people who know it well. I like to say this too, is like err on the side of simplicity, not complexity. Use the things that are already out there and a lot of developers use. If there's a lot of developers using it, it means that they're well maintained and they work well.
Yeah.
So, I like to use databases that a lot of people use, and I like to use auth that a lot of people use because I know there's somebody actively working on that. I don't want to use some obscure new product, although it
Forward
might be
thinking.
cheaper. Yeah, like it might be cheaper, or it might be have a new feature, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure my apps are secure, so I'm going to use things that everybody uses, even if maybe it's not the latest and greatest.
And you really want to think about it at the end of the day. Your main goal of your API is to protect the database and protect the data. Like, it is literally the goalie that is protecting the net, right? It's the last
Yeah,
bouncer to get into to the club. So what are the ways that you can access your database? It's through your API key and it's through data. So what I mean by that is, if you have authorization on your API route and you have data validation on your API route, there's really a very limited amount of things anybody else can do, right? It's either SQL injection or unauthorized data or unauthorized access. It's really the two main
yeah,
things. So if you can focus
yeah,
on those, I think you're pretty well off.
yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And one thing you have mentioned about, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Whatever is
Hmm.
existing available, we can use that. Like you mentioned about authentication, like it is really important in API. And the second approach I really love is, we just don't need to use the sequence IDs 1, 2, 3 just to compare.
Yeah,
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 yeah, I
it's a
really
common
appreciate.
mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, so thank you so much. And we have a lot of questions. And so one person, Wajahat Ali, who is really desperate to ask few questions, and he's
Sure.
yeah. So I think Wajahat, I can approve your request as a presenter mode, and you can ask me your question. Over to you, Wajahat.
Hey everybody listening to me. Thank you so much for your time, Abdullah, Russell, Chris. Thank you for the awareness session. So I'll be straight to the point. You have discussed a lot about the tools, and as a non-technical person who can make apps. So my question is, you see there, if you want to build an app, if you want to build a website, there's a platform called WooCommerce, WordPress, Shopify. If you want to build a marketplace, everything is there. What we as a non-technical person has to follow a flow chart, right? So everything is there, you just have to flow, you have to fill that flow. What I have seen using the Loveable or the Replit and few other non-code platforms, the flow is missing. You see, you can come, you can give the prompt. Lovable can create a page. Let's say I want to make a login. Yeah, it can it can make a page pretty good. But what's next? What's the next flow? The whole flow is missing. Like, if I get that page right and it fulfill my need, I need to say that now this piece is ready, that this puzzle is now ready, I need to go forward to the next puzzle. This whole flow is missing in right now in the no code or AI revolution in the coding segment. How soon you can think this area can enter into the market? And if this thing can come, I guess this will actually disrupt the market, just like the WordPress disrupt the custom coding back then, and Shopify disrupted the marketplace kind of thing. What's your thought, Chris? As a you being said that you are a professional coder, and you just like the when the graphic designing things came in, people used to hate the Canva designer. You are not a designer, but eventually the driver needs to be there, no? So those who
Yeah.
design now on Canva, they are now called as a designer. It doesn't matter the tool, the driver is there. So how soon you can see that this thing can enter into the market?
So it's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to build, right, Russell, with Precursor. It's
Yeah.
what you're kind of talking about, with Shopify, with WooCommerce, everything like that. It's more of like this drag and drop, right? And that's what's kind of missing a little bit from, these AI, is that actual like workflow. And what we call that, like when I break down user stories or epics, user stories, product requirement documents into actual like views and frames, and what does it look like, how does it work, all this kind of stuff, is that kind of user flow going through your application, is what we're actually trying to do with Precursor. So, hopefully we can disrupt the market. I mean, that would be really awesome with that. But that is the missing piece with it. And it's having the knowledge. And that's the hard thing, I think, for non-technical people, is there's a lot more than just coding when it comes to software engineering. Like, you have to know that entire workflow, like what does come next, what all happens when you log into a page. I mean, I can tell you, when you do the authentication, you literally are hitting the API. The API is giving you a token. That token is brought back to the front end. That front end is verifying it, and now using that to access this authenticated page. If you don't have it, it kicks you right back out. So it's like figuring out what the exact workflow is for the user. So I need to log in, I need to go to the dashboard, I need to be able to change my password, I need to be able to edit stuff, whatever it might be, is what we're doing with Precursor, figuring out what does that MVP structure look like? What pages do you need in order to get started? And what is the workflow of it? You obviously need to have a login page or landing page before you have a dashboard. And then once you have a dashboard, you can't have, the actual actions, because you can't access it. Right. So I don't know if that's kind of where you were going with that, but that's kind of the idea we have with Precursor.
Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit. I think Chris covered a lot, and I might hit a few points that he mentioned again, but I think it's worth repeating. So one of the issues, I've done a lot of work. I started out in SEO, search engine optimization. So I've done a lot of work with drag and drop builders, because that was before I understood how to build my own websites. And one of the core issues with those is that, yes, there's a flow built into it, but that flow locks you into that flow as well, right? So it's a benefit, but it's also to your detriment, right? You can't build anything that you want with one of these WooCommerce or Squarespace or Shopify, right? You're confined to the structure that they've built already. And that's just because there's a lot of complexity of building a website that can build websites, right? It's sort of like website inception in a way. And so you're absolutely right, and that is what we're building with Precursor. We are allowing you the full flexibility to build anything that you want, right? The number one complaint that I hear from people who use WooCommerce or Shopify or Squarespace or even WordPress is that they just can't build certain things, right? You can't. There's only so much you can do with it, and as you add more features, they just charge you more and more and more and more and more money to do that thing that, if you built it on your own, would probably cost you pennies versus hundreds of dollars. And so what we're able to do with Precursor is to build the entire structure and the context of the app that you're trying to build, and sort of hand that off to the large language model to figure out how all that stuff fits together and build the flow on its own. And a lot of what these, like in particular Cursor, and Chris and I have sort of been back and forth on this recently about building development checklists. But Cursor has recently included this in their AI models, where it will build a development checklist. So you don't really have to understand exactly what happens when you build authentication. You can almost, just prompt it and say, hey, I want you to build a sign-in page that signs a user in using this database or this auth service. And then once they're signed in, it shows them a dashboard, and it will go and do and solve all those missing flow pieces for you, if you understand what I'm saying. And so I think that's really the benefit, is that we can take these complex ideas that you have and leverage the AI models that understand all of the complexity that a developer would typically be needed for, right? That's why people hire developers, because we understand how those flows should happen normally, and all of the different ways that you can, customize those flows, because sometimes you may not want, when somebody signs in, you may not want them to go directly to a dashboard. You might want them to go to a form that collects extra information, then stores that in a database. Well, now you can just workshop that back and forth with an AI agent, build these documents out that basically tell the AI exactly how you want to build that flow, customized exactly to your needs, and just hand it off and let it do the hard work for you.
Yeah, I totally agreed, and obviously, I'm sure Rajat, you have gotten your answer, and so yeah, we have a few more questions. Obviously, if not few, but 5 to 6 questions. So Isha Noor has question about like if a non-tech person or tech person tries to build something, what could be the key, or we can say a standard, or not exactly the standard, but something we should master to get what we want from AI. So basically, their question is around prompt engineering and if whoever you are, technical or not technical, and what are the key standards to start using AI effectively. I think maybe there's a question around that.
Yeah, I think it's going to start off like really there's fundamentals when it comes to being technical, outside of just coding. Like I said, coding is just a very small aspect of it. It's basically just a language that all coders kind of speak with for loops, if statements, all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to figuring out the exact prompting for using Cursor, Lovable, whatever it might be, you need to just understand the fundamentals of software engineering or development. So having a product requirements document, breaking that down into a user story or epics, and then breaking those down into individual tasks is kind of the like flow of understanding how to work with Cursor or these IDEs. You almost have to treat them like they're a junior engineer, where you have to explain to them exactly how it is and understand that the technical terminology, I guess you could say, helps out a ton because these AIs have that knowledge. They just don't know how to really apply it without direction.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, Chris. I think some of the things that you need to understand are just how the core technologies work together. Like, what is the front end of an application? What is the back end? What do those things involve? Like, how does a browser work? How do databases work? How does authentication work? And how data moves across the internet? What is a server? What is a browser? Getting those big picture things is very helpful to understand what you're building. And then, honestly, one of the biggest things that you're going to need as a developer is just some grit, because you're going to run into a lot of errors over time. Like, you're going to have to debug a lot of stuff. Sometimes things will be very frustrating, and you have to be willing to learn, right? I think that's the biggest thing is like, I've seen this a lot where new developers are like, who can teach me how to code? Nobody's going to teach you how to code. You have to learn how to code on your own. And that just takes a lot of trial and error and just building, and things aren't going to work. I can't tell you how many websites I've built and trashed, but that's just part of the process. So some of that is just going to be like, if you want to put something out there that's going to earn you money as a developer, you got to earn your keep. Like, you got to learn how to do that as well. So it's just, it's a lot of just putting yourself out there and pushing through when things get tough, and using your community to your advantage, right? When you do struggle, like, ask for help, but be willing to learn, because nobody is able to teach you how to code. You have to learn it on your own.
Right. And with the prompting, you just have to really just stay high level with it. Learn these
Yeah.
technical terminologies, learn all this stuff. You don't have to go deep if you're not a technical person, but you need to have an understanding of like 30,000 feet of what it actually is.
Yeah.
You don't have to know the exact syntax of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing more I would like to add. So back in 2022, end of 2022, or I think 2023, I don't know the exact, but we there was a chat GPT was really new, and we were having some issues with the template, and we are trying to execute all the scenarios through chat GPT help, and it took like 6 to 7 hours, and we could not figure it out. And even on that time, ChatGPT was not very matured, and like it was really crazy. And I just asked him just to just ask my change my prompt. Like, if you can you try something different, and my issue was resolved. Like, and I
Mhm.
know, like, before, since that, like, I have seen a lot of improvement, and throughout in the AI, in the models. And actually, we are the user who actually told them, like, this is something really good, this is something not actually what we were looking for. So those feedbacks actually trains and fine tune them. So, like,
Yeah,
that's what.
and
Yeah.
no, you're right. And that's how it kind of is. You have to know what to try, right? Like if you don't know what you don't know at the end of the day. So it's like
Yeah.
if you're not getting the answer, or you're not getting the solution, you need to know, okay, A didn't work. Let's try B. Let's try C. But if you don't know what B and C are, like you're just gonna sit in the same loop that this model's sitting into, trying the same
Yeah.
thing over and over. So
Yeah. And remember that, these AI models are good teachers. So you can ask them, like, is there another way to do this? Like, just like what you said, and have them explain it to you, so that not only is it just coding for you, but it can explain what it's doing to you. So you're just building and learning at the same time. And it's a really powerful way to learn this stuff. So
Yeah, so thank you so much. So Neha has a question about like, biggest concern about AI built project products, and what's your take on how secure the AI output is? Like, whatever AI based product we are using, how secure they are, and yeah, again, like, cyber security.
I think it's getting better. I mean, it's not like it used to be, like just throwing something at the wall and just hoping it sticks. I think there are certain accounts, and I don't know, like I said, if you can just understand, like learn, what I would say is just learn what are the ways a website can get hacked. Like just, there's a lot, but there's the main ones, right? And it's not so much the AI output, but it's being able to understand kind of what the AI output is for the code base. So it's like, again, don't expose the API keys. Again, make sure you have authentication. Um, I think it is getting better, but you have to have some understanding, even if it's from that 30,000 foot view. You need to know what security and a typical application would know. You can't just blindly trust it, is what I would say.
yeah, I would agree with that. I think you just have to assume that security is not always built in. And if you have, like, the way I would probably recommend for non-developers to handle this too is build the app, do your best with security, and then use AI to do a security check and say, hey, look through the code base and tell me if there's any ways that you think somebody could break the security of this or hack into this. Don't ask it to do it, right? But ask it if there are any vulnerabilities. Because again, it's a very AI is an extremely powerful tool. It has a lot of information at its disposal, but it will only do what you ask it to do, right? So if you ask it, it can find security vulnerabilities in software if you ask it to. The other thing too is how you ask it is very important. If you're like, "Hey, I'm trying to hack this," it's probably not going to respond well to that. But if you're saying, "Hey, this is my application, and I'm trying to find security vulnerabilities so that I can patch them," it'll probably give you a better result because it's trained to not do things that it's not supposed to. And that would be one of them. I just want to mention too, I think it was Jawat was asking about our LinkedIn's. I'm happy to share those with you guys. I think maybe we have a link to them somewhere as well. But
Yeah, on the
uh,
startup grind page, your LinkedIn are already set up there. They
yeah,
can join
so
from there. Even we can share there. Even they can follow Startup Grind on Facebook, Instagram, and they will see all the posts and LinkedIn accounts
there you
over
go.
there. And
Yeah, so just
yeah, please, if you
I was
finish.
just gonna say follow Startup Grind and feel free to connect with either of us. We're happy to connect
Yeah,
with you guys.
yeah. So next question is from Usman. Like obviously, like he's my brother, as I told you. Like, and his question is about, can AI become self-aware at some point?
I saw that one. That's a good question.
Yeah,
Go
that
ahead,
is a really
Chris.
good. So, I've been working with AI for a good bit now, and I think it was in September. I was able to go to Google headquarters and actually give a talk on AI and how it's implemented and stuff. It's one of those questions that I think people who, and this isn't against anybody, but people who are not technical kind of just think it as this like black box that you just throw a question in and then all of a sudden like something magical pops out. If you actually kind of peel back the Wizard of Oz kind of veil on it, you'll see that it is literally just a bunch of if else statements, some fancy neural network kind of stuff. Can it become self aware? It's kind of hard because it is stateless. Like, you just have to almost think like how amazing our brains as humans kind of work, where being able to just automatically know all this context, but then also being able to hold all of this memory of, being able to remember something when you were 5 years old because of a certain smell or something like that. Can AI ever get to that point? I mean, I don't think anybody would know that. I mean, you can even hear Elon and Sam Altman and all of these people who, think it is definitely possible. But I think it's all assumption at this point. For now, the way that a normal society is going to use AI and leverage AI, I don't think it's going to be happening at this point, but I would say it would just take one psychopath to allow AI to iterate on itself with another AI and have an AI train another AI and just let it completely loose. That you may
Yeah.
have that kind of situation.
Yeah. I think I have a interesting perspective on this, but like I think this is a really good question, and I've heard it a lot. And I think the first thing that we need to define is, what is consciousness? What is self-awareness, right? Like, how do we know that we are here? How do we know that these things that we see as the chair under myself is actually a chair, right? And I'm not just making that up in my head. The interesting thing about AI, when you look at how it works, like what Chris is saying, is it's actually modeled after our own human brains. So, if you're familiar with some neuroscience, we have neurons in our brains that pass basically electric signals into chemical signals and then back into electrical signals. And depending upon how strong those signals are, they may fire one or more other neurons. And that is how we store memories, right? Like, our idea of a memory is just one chain of neurons firing. That's literally how your brain works. And the same is happening with AI, except instead of neurons physically, we have weights, right? And we talk about these weights and these nodes. Really, they're just triggers, right? When they have enough weight, they trigger the next one after it. And that's how literally AI is working. It's working very similar to our brain. So to say, is it self-aware? It could already be self-aware. It's just how you define that. They've already done experiments where they have, most AI is trained to do a certain task, right? So like ChatGPT is trained to give you helpful answers, and they have seen that, given the right parameters, some AI models will actually clone their own weights to another server to preserve themselves when told that they may be destroyed, right? So you could call that self-awareness if you want to. It's really just how far you go with that. Now, is it to the point where we're in I don't remember the Will Smith movie, but where, there's robots running around the world and killing humans? No, but it's we may not be that far away from that if we're telling it like, hey, do this task, and a human gets in the way of doing that. You may essentially be telling it to get rid of the human, and that's one of the scariest parts. That's a lot of what like Elon Musk has talked about, is it's not far off to think it's possible that, if we train it to do something and then we get in the way of it doing that, it will take us out because we are just one other limiting factor. So it's a great question. I think it's nobody here has the direct answer to that.
Yeah. So I think one thing that is really important, and I was thinking as well, I think to sense the future, I think movies is a great, I think, awareness for us in terms of AI and technology. And okay, we have a next question. What if LLM had metacognition? So this is a question by Saptan Heather. So yeah, anyone can take it, and we have really, really short time as well.
I didn't hear that one. I'm sorry.
It's about so it's a Saptan Heather. Like, what if LLM had metacognition? So that's actually the question.
So just the basically like the thought process, I think,
Yeah.
is kind of what it's around. I mean, you're already seeing that with these models like Claude Sonnet, like thinking models. Like there is this chain of thought kind of process that's already happening with these more premium models. And it's interesting. I've worked with both. I've done a lot with like the deep research kind of models, which is it is very interesting because it's not that it's self-aware. I guess you could say it's self-aware in the sense of it's known the type of solutions it's tried in the past, or it can remember what websites it went and already researched. And it's like just essentially chaining all of this together to give you like a better output. Um, I think we're already there, if that's kind of like the question around it. And it's kind of it's like what Russell was saying, like it's modeled off of how our brains work. You know, most people, there are a lot of people that don't, we have somewhat of an internal filter when we're speaking. When we're talking to someone, we're not going to just blurt out the first thing that comes to our mind. We're just going to kind of think about it and then maybe iterate on it and then say what we're going to say. So that's kind of what AI is already doing, that kind of aspect.
Yeah. I'll just add one thing to that is there was a study that was done recently where basically there is a way to get a little bit of an insight of what's happening inside an AI model. I forget exactly what they call it, but essentially it allows it to write sort of in like a notebook of its thought process. So they're like thinking models, and you can see like how the AI is thinking through some problems. And interestingly, they've seen that in certain circumstances, AI models will sort of cheat. Like they will just say, "Hey, that's a hard math problem. Let's just like assume it's this and then go with that." And that's, I think, what Chris is saying too, right? It's like the metacognition is like thinking about it's like thinking, right? It's like that second level of thinking. And so a lot of times AI models will cheat, right? They're sort of like a teenager that's being told not to do something, and so they'll skip around uh you know doing something so that they're not informing the user of how they're getting to this solution. And we see that with what we call hallucinations, right? Where you'll ask a problem and it'll be like there's a very popular one that's like, if you ask certain models how many R's are there in the word strawberry, it will just give you the number 2, and it's because it just makes a natural assumption when the reality is it's 3, and it's not actually working through that problem. It's just like guessing based on its training. And so I think, again, it's hard to determine what the difference is between cognition because it's very hard for us as humans to even define what is self-awareness and what is cognition. So for us to put a label on an AI is very difficult as well.
So one last thing in terms of this question, by follow up question, like, is this something like what we can say is like, do you recommend any movie, or did you ever seen that kind of movie that actually around that AI and the future, something like this? Obviously, that would be really helpful for audience as well. How what AI would do in upcoming time.
I think there's a number of movies. I mean, if you look at like Iron Man, right? Like Jarvis, I mean, is essentially like an AI kind of sentient kind of being, that has this like cognition. And, when it comes to memories working with AI, it's if you really think about it, the AI LLM will have access to a database and it can actually store these kind of conversations and these memories into these databases. And there's, not to get super technical with it, but there's something called a vector database, which is a little bit different. It's an easy way for AI to kind of like, it's simplest terms, it's how Netflix and Google and a lot of these search engines actually work with their recommendations. It's like, hey, because you watch comedy, you might like romantic comedy. So it's kind of like this mapping, right? But, and I built this actually locally where I was able to have a conversation with like a local model I had on my laptop, but I hooked it up to a database where it could actually store these memories. So it'd be like, hey, my name is Chris. I have two dogs. This is their name, this is their birthday, and stuff like that. And then I would start a new thread, and I would be able to give these kind of memory, or it would be able to go and search these memories and remember things. So as far as like movies and stuff, like we're already kind of there with Jarvis, I would say, just maybe at a very lower level. But instead of movies, I would probably say just watch like keynotes and watch like go on YouTube and watch these like speeches and talks on, AI and kind of where it is. Like Y Combinator, YC has a AI startup school. They just did a whole like week of some of the top minds and people in this space. Andrew NG, I think is a great person to kind of follow in that space too, to learn any of this kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah. I would agree with that. In terms of movies, like I think obviously there's great movies out there like iRobot. I mean, Terminator. I don't know, that's an old one, but um, I think movies are purposely designed to be sort of fantastical and entertaining, and they may not be an exact representation of reality. When I do research on AI, I typically go to YouTube because that's some of the newest and most quality information. There's certainly a ton of people who talk about AI. There's a lot of research that's been done. Like there's a lot of research that's being done by like Anthropic and OpenAI, and they release a lot of papers on these topics, and they're actually really great. They give you a lot of insight into what's coming, what is already here, how these models are actually working under the hood. And a lot of YouTube channels, there's a couple in particular, but one that just comes to mind is called Computer File. And I think it's like the University of Cambridge computer department and computer sciences department. They make all sorts of great videos about AI and how to train models, how these models work, how to interact with them, and some of the things that I've even talked about, they have videos on, such as like how these models are tricking humans, right? Are lying, how these models are uh, you know duplicating themselves into other servers. And I think that's some of the more interesting meta examples, like of, is this self-aware? I mean, if you're duplicating yourself to put yourself somewhere else, that is sort of self-aware, right? That is what nature is, right? At the end of the day, we are just a vessel to make more of ourselves and pass on our knowledge to another generation. And that's sort of what AI is kind of doing at this point. So you could make that argument that it's self-aware in some sense.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like, obviously, it's a huge discussion, and one thing that is really positive is like we can we can we can see the latest startups coming out there on YC combinators related to AI. That is
Hmm.
the first thing, and the second thing is that you mentioned like the universities who are publishing different content on how actually LLMs are working and the research paper around those things. I think that is a really positive thing to learn. And the research they are putting too much effort, energy, and the big names on the universities like Arizona or MIT or others one. they're doing definitely a good job, and it's a great learning,
Hmm.
obviously, in terms of cognition or AI or self-awareness, and this is something really huge to cover still. So Aisha has a really good question about like, does these platforms offer insights into usage, analytics, or scalability bottlenecks as the MVP matures? So as the MVP matures, like obviously this is something not related to technologies, but more likely I think into marketing side.
Yeah, and it's funny that it's a great question, because that is the next bottleneck that's going to happen for people building with AI. Is
Yeah,
what's happening is the barrier is lowering when it comes to building building an actual application or an MVP or some product, but the eyeballs are now staying the same. So now you have an influx of all of these products coming into the market, but now you still have the same eyeballs and number of people. So you're going to have to differentiate yourself now. And I think a lot of us, anybody who has built an app or anything, has thought they had the greatest idea in the world. And then they're like, I'm going to build this, I'm going to like get it out there. And then they get it out there and then they have no idea what to do. They're like, well, do I put it on Reddit? Am I going to get banned from Reddit? Do I need to now spend all this money in marketing? Do I just tell a couple of my friends and hopefully it goes viral? Like, marketing is going to become the new bottleneck, and analytics and funnels and all of this kind of stuff is going to become even more important. And me and Russell were talking about it. We already got a domain for it, and maybe we'll even put it in Precursor, but called Postcursor, like the actual marketing aspect of it. Like, how can we help you get all the stuff you need to do to build an app? Then once you build your app, we need to give you all of the documentation on how to market it now. I think there even is some terminology that's coming out from some people. It's called vibe marketing now, right? Where you essentially are going to like get all of the figure out a go to market strategy. And again, it's this more, it's not having to know everything about marketing, but knowing how to leverage AI to be your expert marketer. What is your go to market strategy? What is your price point? How do you figure out product market fit? All this kind of stuff. I mean, AI can help you in that. You just need to know how to ask it correctly.
Yeah. Chris is 100% right. I mean, we've worked with so many different people who build apps, and they forget that the hardest part of building an app is right after you build it, how do you get people to
exactly.
use it, right? They assume that just because you built it, people are going to start using it, and that's not the reality at all. You have to make sure that people know it exists, and that they actually want to use it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a future feature for us, if not its own entire application. But understanding, I mean, and it's actually part of what's built into Precursor as well, as we want to tackle understanding your avatar and your target market before you even start building, so that when you do build, your app is already talking to that target market. But then once you do have it out there, how do you disseminate that to the world? Like, how, are you going to do Facebook marketing? Are you going to do organic guerrilla marketing? Are you going to beta test it? And those are all important things that a lot of developers don't realize until it's too late, or till they get to that point and they're like, oh crap, I just spent 9 months building this app, but nobody actually wants to use it. And that's the whole point of Precursor, is you can iterate through apps. Like, you have an idea, you bring it to market, you can't find a target market, just move on to the next one, and you can build them in a matter of hours or days instead of months and years. So yeah, I think in terms, just to answer your question too, in terms of like analytics and bottlenecks like that, I think that's a much further down the road issue that people will have. And when you do have that issue of like, how do we scale, how do we track things, at that point you should have paying customers, and you should be able to hire people who are specialists in that area, whether it's in development or marketing or analytics, to take on those tasks. Because AI is an amazing tool, but again, it only is as good as you are using it. And if you don't have specialized knowledge in those fields, you're either going to have to learn it, or you're just going to fail in that aspect. And it's much better to like hire somebody when you have the money to do so, and have them use AI, right? Because you can superpower a marketer by handing them some AI tool and understanding your avatar. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that stuff too much until you have built the app and you have people using it. Then you can start thinking about all the bottlenecks of like scalability and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, most of these analytics you can get are actually built into like these hosting platforms at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like if you're using Vercel or if you're using Cloudflare, like all of those have the analytics that are going to be just built in when you're deploying your application and getting the hosting done. And then as far as scalability, at the end of the day, scalability is really going to be scaling your database. Like, okay, cool, it works with one user and you can store that one user. Well, what happens now when you have a million users that need to be stored and you need to have concurrent like compute? Like all of that is so easy nowadays. It's literally a press of a button, like saying, hey, I have 50,000 users. I need to just up my compute so my server doesn't crash. And all of that nowadays is it's so easy to it's pressing buttons at the end of the day.
And that's really why cloud computing is so popular, because it used to be like you had to own your own servers and maintain those servers and scale them up or down based on how many users you had. But now Amazon does that for you, or Microsoft Azure does that for you, or Google Cloud does that for you, like on the fly automatically. So you don't have to worry too much about that stuff, unless you're building, giant applications like Netflix, right? But they have a team of thousands of developers working on that. So, and if you're getting to 1 million users, you better have a budget at that point, right? You better be charging people enough to hire somebody to manage that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. And obviously, like whenever it's about AI, whenever it's about automation, and people obviously think everything to automate it. I think this is something like when you build something through through AI, and then every other thing is obviously people are demanding or thinking about it, like we can do these automated things as well. But again, I think I was working for an idea yesterday, and when I asked ChatGPT like how much potential it has, and it has brought a few competitors from the market from by crawling through Google, and then said like this is your unique selling point, could be this is the business model you can do, this is the sales thing you can do. So obviously models are obviously helping people to, but at the end data is still there that is not accurate in terms of making a good decisions to roll out in the market. I think that is still there. I think we have covered all the questions, and I think Wahid has something about microservices that you can deploy and then to make it more. It's just a feedback, not a question. Other than that, I think we are good. And thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you so much, Russell. Like it was a really good session, and it was, and I hope you really enjoyed it as well. And
Yeah, it
we
was our
have
pleasure.
done things in a very,
Yeah.
really short time. And if you don't mind, any one of you can just take a selfie by covering the three of us. And Mavish, if you don't mind, can you turn on your camera? And one thing more, Mavish is our teammate working as a marketing content marketer, and it's her first experience in the public. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, but yeah, like obviously she will continue these things for the upcoming webinar as well. Can you take a selfie if any one of you, if you are
I
comfortable?
don't have my phone. I think my phone is actually in the other room.
You mean a screenshot or a
Yeah,
selfie?
yeah. I
Oh,
think a
screenshot.
selfie
Oh.
or whatever is comfortable. This is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take a screenshot. Let me just,
Uh, Mavish, yes, yes.
there you
And
go.
with
Give me
with the
one.
smile face, and with like we
All
have
right,
done a really
ready?
good job, and
One,
yeah,
two, three.
yeah.
Nice,
Thank you.
I got it.
Thank
Um,
you so much.
yeah, and I want to mention again, like if you
Yeah,
guys are interested in connecting with us, feel free to connect with us, follow us
yeah.
on LinkedIn, and if you want to be one of the first to try Precursor, you can head over to precursor one word dot tools. and sign up for the early access, and you'll be one of the first to be able to beta test it. And we'd love to have
Awesome.
you guys try it.
Yeah, obviously, Toronto Digits would be the first one who will definitely start using it, and we will obviously roll out this message in our newsletter as well. Whoever want to use
Awesome.
try out Precursor, we would definitely roll out this message in our newsletter to attendees, to the existing subscribers from the founders or startups. And yeah, like it was really
Amazing.
amazing discussion, and thank you so much for your really quick turnaround, especially Christopher. Like I was involved in communication, and you guys have done a really good job, and I am really happy for it. Thank you so much, and feel free to
Thank
share
Yeah,
your
you.
absolutely.
feedback as well. We have recorded all this session. We will make different chunks of questions and videos, and we will post on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere, and you just need to share it. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
Excellent. And if you have connections with other chapters, we'd be happy to jump on
Yeah,
their streams as well. So
yeah, sure,
Yeah,
sure, sure. Thank you so
absolutely.
much. Keep in touch. Thank you so much.
yeah,
Alrighty.
thank you
Have
Thank
so
a
much,
you.
great
guys.
weekend. Thank you so much.
Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.